Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate. Joe Mueller.
Welcome back to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode number 55. Today's special guest, who I'm very honored to have on, is Jefferson Lilly, mobile home park investment expert. Jefferson, thanks again for coming on.
Joe, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah,
you're broadcasting from Chicago today?
That's right. Out of my
Fantastic.
office here, actually in the suburbs of Chicago. But the topics, your experience with mobile home park investing, and I don't even know how many are around here, to be honest. It's something I've never really dove into.
Yeah.
But, there's still a lot of people that are very curious about it. We actually had a guy that was also on the Bigger Pockets podcast, like you were.
Yep.
You remember what episode that was?
I believe 111.
111, okay.
But you can find me that podcast over there at that website. Just search it on my name, I think.
Absolutely. So there's another guy that was actually on the Bigger Pockets podcast that was a member of my meetup group. And he also does mobile home park investing, and great guy. He actually just moved down to Texas actually to start investing more into that part of the nation, and more opportunity is what we heard. And he didn't
there
like
are a lot of them in Texas,
and he didn't like Illinois anymore, which is understandable given our current climate.
Yeah, right. Well, we won't talk politics or
nope.
other Chicago area things.
So why don't we hear a little bit more about Jefferson Lilly before we even get started with some of the questions I have?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I'm coming to you from sunny San Francisco today. Mm-hmm. So we're both in great cities. I moved out here almost 20 years ago after business school. I was roughly 30. I spent most of my 30s working for the man, as it were, working at three different startups. Okay. And came through the dot-com boom and bust a little more lucky than smart, but it's always better to be lucky. And just, I just figured at that point, hey, all this sort of momentum investing, high tech, solar tech, biotech, silly tech investing just isn't really for me. Okay. More power to the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world that have made billions at it, but that just wasn't something that I was particularly good at picking. Whatever was going to be the next incredibly hot startup. So I started doing more value investing, both in the public markets, and then after about another 5 years, I got more focused on real estate. And I've always been a huge fan of Warren Buffett. I started thinking like, hey, I should probably do more value investing, also in real estate, and basically just diversify, I guess, a little bit out of the stock market. But still buy value, stay within my circle of competence, as Buffett teaches. I am obviously not in his league, but I try and learn as much as I can from him about investing. Anyway, so I thought, hey, I'll buy an apartment building and, fix it up, put some new roof on, put in some new kitchens, make it better for the tenants, bump up rents, make it better for me. It's a win-win. And then just in going to sites like LoopNet and looking under, filtering for multifamily, and I knew I wasn't going to be finding anything value in the Bay Area. So I was already looking, Lubbock, Texas, Ames, Iowa, Peoria, Illinois. Looking in these places, I'd see like 99 apartment buildings at an 8 or 8.5, maybe, 8.5 cap rate. And then I'd see, mobile home park, like 11 cap. Which basically means that's what your unlevered yield is for anybody listening that isn't familiar with that term. If you buy something for, $1 million and it's priced in an 11 cap, then you should put $110,000 a year in your pocket, basically an 11% yield.
Right.
Anyway, and I thought, well, that's insane. I'm not buying a friggin' mobile home park, and I delete the search and do it in, Madison, Wisconsin or Omaha, Nebraska. Honestly, I don't know how many times it took me to get hit over the head before I finally thought, I guess mobile home parks are multifamily, and, if they really pay this much more money, why wouldn't I do it? Why don't I look into and see what this quirky little niche is all about? So,
Sure.
Started going to seminars. I bought books. I listened to tapes. I built up an unofficial advisory board of about 10 guys that all owned mobile home parks. And, it took me about 17 months from the time I kind of got turned on to the space in late 05 to then close on my first park in early 07. I wasn't looking full time. And we obviously buy a little more. I'm buying a park at least one a quarter, maybe more. But anyway, that's how I got my start. It was sort of part art, part science, or part plan, part dumb luck. But this really is, I think, the best real estate niche going, far better than apartments or self-storage or, of course, office or hotel or any of the other sexy any of the other sexy niches of real estate. This is quite a thing.
Awesome. No, that sounds incredible. What I know offline before we got started, we talked briefly about the ability to possibly push yourself into retirement maybe a little bit faster by investing in mobile home parks.
Yep.
I'd like the audience to hear a little bit more about that. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So first, I think you need to think about. So if you're starting with relatively little money, if you're somebody that's, in your 40s, 50s, maybe maybe into your 60s, and you kind of have, 10 grand or 50 grand to your name, then retirement is otherwise a challenge. So, what you can do in this space is first keep your day job. I'm not saying this is a get rich quick overnight thing. So you keep your day job, keep your steady income. But this niche, mobile home parks, has a very easy on-ramp, as I call it. And even if you're not ready to fly down the highway just as yet, again, you can kind of build up speed on that nice, easy on-ramp. And what I mean by that is if you can find the right park owner to work with, you can purchase used mobile homes or even be given like an abandoned mobile home from a park owner. You should get a break on the rents for, a couple of months while you're fixing up the home. But for sort of, low single digit thousands of dollars and some sweat equity, you can start rehabbing mobile homes yourself and then putting them out on your own rent to own agreements. Mm-hmm. So you might put in, 1,000 or maybe 2,000 in materials plus your sweat equity. And then you put that home out on your own rent to own agreement. It's a win for you because you're now getting back, maybe $300 a month. Say you've put in $2,000, you're going to get all your money back in, whatever, 6-7 months there. Mm-hmm. Maybe that note goes for 3 years or 4. So, if things go well, you're going to do, you shouldn't have any trouble doubling your money over that time. You do have to be careful about what tenant you pick.
Sure.
I know a guy that got started this way. I just bought my own park. I had the wherewithal to buy a park, but I'm saying if you're starting kind of with single digit thousands or into the tens of thousands, this is a way to start. If you can't, find a smaller mobile home park to buy just straight up.
Sure.
Anyway, so I know a guy. He got started. He did approximately 50 of these deals. We call them in our business, we call them Lonnie deals. There's a gentleman now deceased called Lonnie Scruggs who wrote a book called Deals on Wheels that details this. Now, again, it is important that you work with the right park owner, and get some break there on your rents, like while the house is empty or while you're fixing it up.
Sure.
Because the real power is in the land. So, but still, you can start for relatively little with the homes. This other gentleman I know parlayed that into about 50 of these Lonnie deals, as we call them. I don't think he had them all at the same time, but, he got to the point, I think, where he had, thousands and thousands of dollars rolling in every month. And then, frankly, cutting your teeth on the mobile homes is the hard part of this business. It's not very hard to own land if all your tenants own their own mobile homes and are just paying you lot rent.
Mm-hmm.
So really, we like to be in the land business. That
Right.
said, where I'm going with this, you can start relatively inexpensively with the homes, build that up, and then buy your own small park. There are 5 and 10 and 15 space parks out there. And once you know the home side of the business, again, that's 80% of this business, and you've done the hard work. But it wouldn't be inconceivable, say, to find a 5, 6, 7 space park for $100,000, and then maybe you put down, who knows what deal you can get. Maybe you put down 10 grand, maybe you put down 20 grand. You have the seller carry back the rest of the paper.
Sure.
Or if you can get a bank interested in a loan that small, 80 grand, it's not unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
But then you parlay it and you buy a small park, and then you fix that up. Maybe again, still some homes to fix up. You do that. Maybe you bring in a couple of mobile homes to infill any vacant pads in the park. So you bump the rents a bit. It's not inconceivable that you might double the value of a park if you're working it that hard, fixing up the homes. So great, you've now taken your $100,000 park and it's worth $200,000. And now if you can borrow out 75% loan to value, you can borrow out 150 grand and go buy something else bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So you can parlay that way, and it wouldn't at all be impossible in this business. Starting with, say, 50 grand, that after a decade, you might end up owning, say 50 pads across several different parks. And depending on the quality, probably those pads would be generating, certainly $100 each. So you'd have $5,000 a month in pretty steady income.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're better quality parks, higher lot rents, you could potentially double that number.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, you're not quite a Rockefeller flying around in private jets from one private yacht to another. So I don't
Not yet.
I don't want to overstate. Yeah. But if somebody can do that in this business, I would like to hear from you.
Yes. Awesome. Me too. Yes, please.
Yeah. But so you can do that starting with relatively little and get a path to a reasonable retirement, call it $5,000 a month within 10 years, if you're willing to really, like I said, work it, reach out to park owners, look at some creative financing, seller carry, and again, do some work as far as managing the park, fixing up those homes, what have you. You shouldn't have any trouble turning 50 grand into 50 grand a year or more in recurring income in this business if you work at it for 10 years.
Absolutely. No, I love it. A couple questions came out of that is a little bit more on the seller financing side. It's very conceivable, at least from my understanding with the mobile home park industry, that a lot of the current owners would actually prefer to, and please correct me, carry back a loan on it and actually finance the deal for the next buyer. Does that sound right, or am I off base there?
You are a little off base. At least the folks we've approached almost always want a pile of cash. We do have a couple pieces of seller carry. We've got 19 parks in the portfolio right now, about 1,540 pads. But out of those 19, I think we've only got a couple with seller carry.
Really? Okay.
So it's not that common. A lot of sellers, honestly, I don't think they really think through the tax implications because, of course, when you deliver somebody a large pile of cash at closing, they have to pay taxes on all that. Mm-hmm. And then, we sort of say, well, what are you going to do with the money? You're going to put, and a lot of folks that are retiring say, oh, I'm just going to put it in the bank. Now, again, it's one thing if you say, hey, I've got the hottest deal ever. I need your cash to go put it in something else and double my money overnight. It's, of course, very hard, and it would be logical to just want a pile of cash in that situation. But most mom and pops we buy from, they just put the money in the bank. And, of course, at today's interest rates, they're going to earn like 1% on it. And we tell them, like, hey, we'll pay you something down, 25%, and then we'll pay you out the rest. We'll create an income stream for you. We'll borrow your money at, say, 3-4%. So you're going to earn dramatically more. And ultimately, if somehow we're shysters and we screw you, Then, of course, you get to foreclose on us and take back the park, keep our down payment, take back the park, and run it and sell it to somebody else. So this isn't some crazy deal here. The downside for you as a seller is very limited. And again, the upside from reduced taxes, because it becomes an installment sale, to reduce someone's taxes and provide them a greater return on their money, higher interest rate, makes total sense. But most people just don't get it. They think somehow you're trying to steal from them, and they say, no, just give me a pile of cash. I'll pay all the taxes, and I'll put what's left in the bank and earn 1%, and that's what they want to do. So, okay, we're very financeable. We have no trouble raising money from banks, and we'll just go ahead and cash you out, and you can have no further income, and you can pay all the taxes. That's fine. So unfortunately, usually we just cash people out, but we view seller carry as a great win-win.
Sure.
Again, unless the seller is really looking to just buy something, 1031, do something else with the money ASAP. But most folks want to retire, and why they aren't more open to seller carry, I don't know. Maybe I'm not a good salesperson, Joe, and I just need to do a better job selling them on the idea of seller.
And officially, for the record, I was way off base. I'm sorry. That's just
don't
something
take
I
it
thought
personally, Joe. There are a lot of misconceptions about the mobile home park business.
There you go. And that's why we're here. That's why we're figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I want to get started in mobile home park investing, I mean, how do I go about sourcing some of these opportunities from like a mom and pop owner so that I could potentially, do a value add to, and, maybe like the situation you described earlier? I mean, what would you recommend for a beginning investor?
Yes. Yeah. So there are websites out there like LoopNet where you'll find more widely shopped deals. We're a fan of trying to get deals that aren't widely shopped.
Sure.
We go direct to brokers, and we'll tell them. There are I'm guessing about 50 brokers. Not brokerage firms, but like individual brokers. There are probably 50 in this country that handle well over half of all the transactions. And if you just start looking around at other parks for sale, you'll have no troubles coming across the names of the brokers that
Sure.
do this. But it's really just a matter, I think, of approaching a broker and saying like, hey, I want to buy a park, that has such and such characteristics. Maybe it has to be within a couple miles of your house, or maybe you want something that's more of a fixer-upper because you've got time and money to fix homes. Or maybe you're the other way around. You're willing to sacrifice some growth, but you just want a, fully baked, done park. But, just think through exactly what it is that you want. Let the brokers know that. And then hopefully they will have something and bring it to you off market. We call that a pocket listing.
Yep.
Many sellers, and this was news to me when I got into the business, I was like, why wouldn't everything be widely shopped? But it's not. A lot of, especially sellers, may say, hey, I don't want my tenants to know that my park is for sale. And they'll tell a broker to just sort of call 5 or 10 people quietly and show them the deal and see what price it brings. So you want to be that guy or that gal that's on that broker's list, because the broker remembers you, and it's like, oh yeah, this is the guy from Tallahassee, Florida, who just wants a turnaround park of 25 to 40 spaces. And here I've got one. Let me call this guy, because this is exactly what he wanted. So you want to do that. You also just want to outreach directly to park owners. You can, find lists, out of the yellow pages. You can call zoning boards. You can just drive the speed bumps. But think about sending out postcard mailers and making follow-up phone calls to park owners, not the managers. The managers will fear for their job and will
never pass along the info.
Never pass along your name and number to the actual owner.
That's a good piece of advice. I like that. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you kind of have to track this down through, like find out who actually owns it, call the county, find out who owns it, which is often an LLC, and then you have to call over like to the Secretary of State's office and say, hey, who are the principals, or at least who's the registered agent for, ABC Acquisitions LLC, and then you find out who's behind the LLC, and then you send a letter, make a phone call. So it's a bit of work, But, ultimately all it takes is one or a couple good deals, and then you're well on your way to a decent retirement. You find the right 50 space park and cash flow $100 or $200 out of it because you bonded with the seller and you got it, good terms, seller carry, and
Sure.
Boom, there's your 5,000 or 10,000 a month in income. Anyway, so both going to brokers and going direct to park owners is what it takes. It isn't easy. It isn't impossible. And more power to you if you just find, world's best deal out on some website. But in general, you do have to do some digging to find these things.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Anything that's that good is never going to come that easy, right? You got to work hard for it.
Yeah.
So I love it. So with 1,540 pads, approximately, I think you said, and 19 parks, how do you manage that? You're in San Francisco. I imagine you got parks all over the place, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage
they're not
that?
really all within 1 hour of my house here in San Francisco.
Right, sure. So, what do you utilize to manage these properties, or do you have a team in place? I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we've got a team, and it's a growing team. But where we stand now is that it works this way. Let's go bottom up. So all the parks have a manager, and virtually all of those parks have an on-site manager. We typically look for somebody that lives inside the community. They'll often have one of the nicest houses in the park. Doesn't mean it's the newest, but it's very well kept. It's painted. There is not junk in the yard. And in fact, the yard is mowed and the cars look, reasonably nice and late model. Anyway, so we usually find somebody that clearly cares about appearances and maintaining their property. Again, they don't own the land. That's us, but they own that house. Anyway, so most all of our parks have an on-site manager. They're responsible, as we call it, for all three-figure things, all three-figure matters that come up. So that basically means they're collecting the lot rent, which is typically in our communities, call it $250 to $350 a month. They collect all the lot rent. They also pay minor bills. So that would be, for instance, the sewer's stopped up, so they need to call somebody to come out for $150, with a roto-rooter and clear the line. So all those sorts of three-figure, smaller dollar decisions and responsibilities, those are the manager. When we get into four-figure stuff, like, hey, somebody abandoned a house and we have to go spend $3,800 rehabbing it, or heaven forbid, $5,000 or $6,000.
Right. Those
sorts of four-figure decisions and five-figure decisions, like we just repaved most of our park in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. Well, that was a $76,400 expense. So most of those four and five-figure decisions are now handled by our asset manager. This is somebody that really, manages our investing back into the properties. Or it might be, hey, our asset manager has found a great little home for this community on Craigslist and can buy it for, $15,000. So again, 4 or 5 figure decisions are made by our asset manager. She's joined us from 2 other firms. She's worked in the last 10 years for 2 of America's top 10 largest mobile home park operators.
Awesome.
So we've got her. And then ultimately, when we get up into 6-figure decisions, that would be at the high end, that would be an acquisition of a smaller park. And then certainly 7-figure decisions. Our average park is probably a $2 or $3 million acquisition. Those are all decisions that Brad and I make. And we're actually working now on our first 8-figure decisions.
Wow.
We've got a portfolio of parks under contract in the Midwest for just a little over $10 million. So there's 8 figures. So anyway, the higher decisions, the 7 and 8 figure stuff, which is generally all acquisitions. Thankfully, it's not rehab for parks or homes.
Right. Right.
So 7-8-figure decisions are acquiring parks. Those fall on us. So that's kind of how our chain of command goes, bottom up, from the parks up to Brad and myself. And then kind of off to the side, but still very integral team members, we've got a CFO who, of course, makes sure all the numbers are booked correctly and does some investor relations. We've raised money now from, I think, 110, maybe 120 folks. So she helps prepare all that and prepare K1s and those kinds of things. And then the other key member is we've got a guy now doing acquisitions for us full time. He's basically doing what I just laid out as far as going directly to brokers, seeking pocket listings, these unlisted deals, and then he's also ramping up our outreach directly to park owners. So again, it's Brad and myself, and then reporting into us our VP of Asset Management, our CFO, and our acquisitions guy. And then again, basically one person down managing each park on site.
And is that the responsibility for collecting the rent? Is that lie mainly on the shoulders of that on-site park manager then? I mean, are they utilizing technology at all, or is it like cash in hand, or how does that work for mobile home parks for you guys?
Yeah, great question. So we do not accept cash.
Okay.
Both, of course, a theft opportunity,
right?
Be, heaven forbid, a manager that's stealing from us, or more likely just somebody in the park, that hears like, hey, the manager has got, 5,000 or 8,000 cash, the first week of every month in the office.
Right.
Word gets around. So that's usually one of the very first changes we make. Most parks we buy, which have been run more mom and pop, the mom and pops will be taking some amount of cash. Anyway, we put a stop to that. So we only take check or money order. And then we have standardized. We've tried a couple of different things. So subject to change, you can have me back on in another year or so and see where we are. But
Okay.
At least right now, we're using some software called Rent Manager,
Okay.
which is geared specifically to multifamily, not specifically mobile home park. It's a little more geared towards apartment, but it works well for doing mobile home park accounting. So it not only does the accounting, but here's a nice little neat little feature. You can plug in a check scanner. So we send all our managers check scanners.
Okay.
And then as the manager scans that check or money order, check scanners gobble up both, it not only deposits the money in our account, it also updates Rent Manager. So everybody can see in real time who's paid and who's not. Anyway, so that's how the rent is collected. We don't like, and there are more than one way to skin a cat. Other park owners will have rent mailed into a central office, but we don't like that. Frankly, we want to get the rent quicker without the float in the mail, and we just don't like all the checks in the mail excuses. So
Sure.
We collect all our rents on site, typically a big, heavy metal rent box sunk in a yard of concrete that says no cash on it. But we typically collect on site and then again use that check scanner to both deposit and simultaneously update our accounting software.
Yeah, I mean, creates more efficiencies and more accuracy, I would imagine. That's awesome.
We think so.
Rentmanager.com. So, as a little tidbit for the listeners, if you're even in multifamily or looking into getting into the mobile home park business, that might be something to check out.
Yep.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. So obviously you're really diving deep into what's out there in the mobile home park space. I know you have your own podcast that you host. I know you've got a LinkedIn group. Can we talk a little bit more about those aspects? I'd like to hear.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear about the. I mean, I've listened to the podcast, so I'm going to continue to listen. But maybe talk about it for the listeners, so you can get some more.
Yeah. So our podcast is simply called the Mobile Home Park Investors Podcast, and folks can find it either just by searching through LinkedIn or Stitcher, or we've got a website simply called mobilehomeparkinvestors.com. that website actually will both link you through to the podcast and to our LinkedIn group. We've got about 3,600 folks on LinkedIn. The group there is the same name, Mobile Home Park Investors, but that website will link you both. And so so those have kind of grown up somewhat organically, and I wish I could tell you that I had some grand strategic vision for all of this 10 years ago when I was still working that last day job in tech and transitioning into this business. But it's kind of grown organically. The group was something I started now, I think, about 6 years ago. And we just trade some deal flow. We trade operating advice. People will say, hey, I've got this tenant issue. Or, hey, I've got a park under contract in Ames, Iowa. Does anybody know a good bank in Iowa for me? And so, and sometimes somebody will just say, hey, I'm passing on this deal. Maybe it's, perfectly good deal, but too far from my home. Here it is. Anyway, so the group has grown organically. We're up to, again, 3,600 some odd members now and adding more every day.
That's great.
The podcast thing. Yeah, and that's the biggest on LinkedIn.
Oh, that's the biggest group on LinkedIn?
For mobile home park investing.
Sure.
Yes.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, not the biggest of all. But
that's why I had to double check.
Yeah, that's the biggest for mobile home park investing. And unlike, there are a couple other groups, but I actually curate the content and the people in our group. So, for instance, I won't let somebody just post effectively a press release, hey, aren't I great? I'm a mortgage broker. And if you ever need money, call now, 1-800, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't really add that much value. So I moderate our LinkedIn group so that there's no spam. And basically I moderate it to be a conversation. So people, again, will typically have a specific question like, I'm looking for a bank in Iowa. Or, hey, I've got this legal issue trying to track down title for a mobile home that's abandoned. How do I do that in the state of Montana? Mm-hmm. What have you? So it's really one-on-one responses rather than somebody just going copy, paste, and just pasting in a press release and trying to blast it out. So anyway, so that's what I think makes our group different and particularly valuable to members. The podcasting thing started roughly 2 years ago. I got a call out of the blue. No, I take that back. Somebody emailed me. It was that Bigger Pockets Bigger Pockets podcast. Somebody emailed me through Bigger Pockets and said, hey, the Bigger Pockets guys want to do a podcast about mobile home parks. I thought you'd like to know. So I just threw my hat in the ring, and a week or two later, we were podcasting.
That's awesome.
And then getting that publicity, which was, so it wasn't really on my radar screen. I mean, I kind of knew what podcasting was, but it wasn't specifically part of our growth plan. Anyway, so then a couple months later, one of these podcast agents that had been hired by somebody else to recruit guests.
Right.
Somebody else, one of these agents called me and said, hey, do you want to be on this other guy's podcast? And of course I said yes. And lo and behold, now both of these podcasts seem, when they release, seem to be generating traffic to the Park Street Partners website. And I'm thinking that's a good thing, to be able to raise more money. Anyway, so it still took me, Joe, probably, I have to get hit over the head multiple times to get something. It still probably took another couple of months before I thought, well, maybe I can get one of those podcast agents, to pimp me out and I'll hire them just to push me onto other people's shows.
Right.
And hence here I am on your show, Joe.
That is correct. Yes.
But so I now actually work that both ways. So then also roughly about that time, I hired, again, it was actually a different podcast agent at the time, but hired somebody not only to pimp me out onto other people's podcasts, but also to recruit guests onto our show. We decided to do our own podcast, my partner Brad Johnson and I. So that got started, I believe that was late in 2015. that we started our own podcast again after I had been on a couple of others. So our mobile home park investors podcast is the first of its kind. We get around 10, 11,000 downloads a month.
That's great.
And we get people. We do it. Yes, we're nice guys, but we also, of course, have some monetary interest in this. We do get folks that call us virtually every week. We'll get a call or an email from somebody saying like, hey, I'm thinking of investing in your fund. I've got 50 grand or $1 million or whatever, let's talk. So it helps us raise money principally. Secondarily, it does help us raise deal flow. We get calls periodically, less frequently than prospective investors, but we get calls periodically from listeners that know of off-market mobile home parks for sale. Mm-hmm. And in fact, last fall we closed on our deal in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. Great little market, and that was from a couple of younger guys that want to get into the business. They didn't have the resources or the expertise just yet, but
Sure.
They knew about this park off-market, brought it to us. We paid them a referral fee, and we've been doing some coaching and helping them learn the business. So our podcast does also help us find parks to buy.
I love it. No, a very lucrative way to raise capital and generate some deal flow. I mean, that's incredible. I think it's like an audio RIA, real estate investment club. It's all on audio because you're promoting yourself, you're promoting what you do. You got people that get interested, they want to bring deals to you because they're interested in doing the deal as well. I'm sure they get a little taste of it or a referral or however you work that out. I mean, that's incredible. That's why I podcast as well. I love it. It's awesome.
Here we are.
So how do we how does you already gave out the info on the website. How else can people get in touch with you?
So our company again is Park Street Partners. Our website is simply parkstreetpartners.com. So we've got some additional resources there for folks that might be looking to buy their own park. And we've got resources there and contact information for folks that may want to just co-own parks with us. And invest in our fund. So we pretty much always got a fund to open. We're just about to open our third fund, I think in, let's just call it another 30 or 60 days. So for folks that, are intrigued with the space, but maybe don't want to get their hands super dirty by owning their own park directly. Again, we're more than happy to take folks into our fund. And then they get to participate in the space passively and, of course, benefit from our deal flow and operational expertise.
How would you? So, if somebody's interested and they just want to learn a little bit more, do you have any recommendations as far as maybe some? You mentioned when you first got started, you had not only you started like a unofficial advisory board, you mentioned, but you also did some seminars or some type of education. I mean, do you have any recommendations for anything out there that people could utilize to learn more about mobile home park investing that you know of?
Yeah, so we just encourage folks to go through our podcast.
Okay.
Roughly the first 20 episodes really are just Brad and myself talking about the business, why it's good, how to get into it, how to do on-site diligence, how to do off-site diligence, how to rehab a home, how to hire and screen a manager. And then roughly many of the podcasts, sort of 20 and onward, are guests, which will still, I think many of our listeners will still find helpful. So I take a listen to our podcast. There's another good book. There's a good book out there by George Allen. I think it's How to Find, Buy, and Manage a Mobile Home Park, something like that. So that is good as well. I'd encourage folks to indeed just start putting the word out at their local RIA meetings. Go to RIA meetings if you don't already. Put the word out. Mention it to folks that you meet casually, socially. You'll find you'll get a lot of weird looks, but 1 in 10 people will say, "Oh yeah, my dad owned a mobile home park and." It was what sent us all to Europe for awesome summer vacations. Here's my dad's number. Call him.
Right.
that sort of thing. That happened to me with a guy through my church. It was just out of the blue, and his dad was very helpful. Anyway, so build up that sort of network, and then ultimately you're going to have to just pull the trigger and go out there and do your first deal, and still it'll be a learning experience. But get as educated as you can prior to getting into it, and then, like I said, then it's time to pull the trigger and start moving forward.
Yeah. So while you were mentioning that, I looked up that book you just brought up by George Allen. So it's titled "How to Find, Buy, Manage, and Sell a Manufactured Home Community."
There you go.
And the book you mentioned earlier was Deals on Wheels: How to Buy, Sell, and Finance Used Mobile Homes for Big Profits and Cash Flow by Lonnie Scruggs. Both of those are available on Amazon for
Amazon, exactly.
Anyone that's interested. Though I will mention that the hardcover of the George Allen book is $173. So that's a little pricey, but that's the cost of an education,
Joe,
right?
If you think education is expensive, try ignorance.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So, the book is well worth $173.
Right. Okay. One last question before we wrap it up here, and that is, you mentioned that, and I brought it up again, that unofficial advisory board. How did you put that together? How does that work out? Did you contact other park owners just by kind of doing some research, or was this through Bigger Pockets or networking? How did that all come together?
Oh, yeah. So this predates Bigger Pockets. This was back in like 05, 06 when I was first getting interested in the business. So, yeah, it was mostly just like I said, mentioning it to a range of people. I found one guy, I think you can also find, and it's so much easier now to find guys online. But I do that as well. Find experienced park owners. Again, just mention it to friends. Go to your local RIA. You can also, here's an idea. I didn't do this at the time. Maybe I should have. But every state has its own manufactured housing association. It basically does all the lobbying at the state level for mobile home park owners, and typically the industry. So that would include people that are insurance agents providing insurance for mobile home park owners. It would typically include the movers. That requires a special toter truck to move and set a mobile home. Mm-hmm. Anyway, look up your local state's manufactured housing association and ask them. You might just also attend one of their meetings. Certainly if they've got a big annual meeting coming up, see if you can go as a guest or go for a couple $100. Sure. But start, putting the word out, bring some business cards, be the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed newcomer. And you shouldn't have too much difficulty finding, an old grizzled veteran that kind of thinks you look like their grandson and they're willing to help you just because you're a nice guy. That's what you want. But yeah, if you go looking for it, like most things in life, if you go looking for it and you're intentional about it, opportunities will magically present themselves if you kind of make it known what you're looking for. So I'd also network through the state association. Shouldn't be hard to find other park owners, and look for somebody that's probably smaller. Look for somebody that's an actual owner. There might be some corporate owners that are a little more bureaucratic, and of course what you're looking for is somebody who's like an actual park owner, the president of their own organization, whatever size it is. But even if it's just one guy that owns one park or one guy that owns 5 or 10, whatever, you want to find somebody, guy or gal, that's a park owner and really has that hands-on experience and has had that full breadth of experience. You don't necessarily want to talk to just the junior accountant at the huge bureaucratic investment company that owns mobile home parks. You want somebody that lives it, breathes it. Sure. And is the owner directly. And you can find those folks through your state's manufactured housing association.
Oh, that's a great tip. And it all comes back to networking, and that's something that I'm constantly beating the drum on almost every single podcast, getting to know people in the same space and asking the right questions and, getting their attention and being able to have some communication and conversation. So thanks for answering that. Again, I a lot of great information on this podcast today. I I really, really appreciate you coming on. I know you're a very busy guy, and I just want to give you a special thanks for spending the time with me today. But that's about all I got, unless there's anything else you want to add at the end here.
No, that's it, Joe. Thanks for having me on. Like I said, feel free to have me back in a year. You can see if and how I've grown. I'm planning to double. Let me just throw that out there. I should be at 3,000 pads. Well, give me 18 months. Give me till the end of next year. But you can hold me accountable. You'll be part of my therapy or support group, and you can have me back on late next year and say, Jefferson, did you meet your numbers? What has been going on, pal? So
that is awesome.
Would love to be back on your show. We can do some follow-up.
And one more time, if the listeners want to connect with you online or however you'd prefer.
Yeah, parkstreetpartners.com and mobilehomeparkinvestors.com.
Excellent. All right. Thanks again for your time today. Great podcast. This is episode number 55 of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Signing off.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investoремpowermentchicago.com or tennisgrouprealty.com.